Is called to order, and I would like to invite Patrick Lee, Stanford Hall Senator, to the front to center us and open us in prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. O God, whose hand lovingly guides every step of our day, graciously look upon this meeting and all of its participants, that whatever we do is oriented towards your greater good. Help us counsel the lost, assist the marginalized, and love the broken. Let us live loudly in your ways as you intended. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That was beautiful. All right, before roll call, I'll just preface this meeting with two brief announcements. One, I'd just like to remind you all that our meetings are always recorded and live streamed to Facebook for anyone that is interested. In today's particular case, I have received correspondence from a reporter from Politico that they will be joining us over Zoom. Reporters from other news media outlets may be joining us, and I just wanted to make sure that you are all apprised of that. And comport yourself accordingly with that knowledge. So just wanted to put that on your radar. And the second announcement is just that I would smile upon a motion to limit meeting time to 90 minutes, if anyone would like to make said motion. Okay, we can vote on that motion. Wonderful. Okay, we will limit our meeting time to 90 minutes. Thank you all so much. And without further ado, we can proceed to roll call.
Dan Bowden-Diestel. Isabella Garcia. Daniel Schermerhorn. Sarah Kirsch. John Mansfield. Christina Escajadillo. Anoop Sunkara. Michael Murakami. Jordan Leiden. Niels Casperson. Maggie Allen. Albertina Estrada Martinez. Madison Nemeth. Henry Jackson, Benjamin Earhart, Jason Thomas, Natalie Ortega, Molly Schrock, Elaine Teeters, Ahmed Al-Hossani, Alec Brailer, Bianca Burnett, Carson Thompson, Libby Messman, Anisha Japira, Michael Lynch, Miles Kelly, Alex Kobilowski, Patrick Lee, Grace Franco, Teresa Salazar, Henry Bates, Blake Johnson, Johnny O'Meara, Renee Pearson, Jordan Thuralt, Sam Canova, Ricardo Pozas Garza, Connor Delaney, Rachel Engel, Thomas Davis, Aaron Benavides,
Here.
Grace Stevenson,
Here.
Mairead Pfaff, Julia Orr-Kurt, Matthew Bisner or David Hongs. Awesome. Esteban Linares and Karen Kennedy. Awesome.
All right, thank you, Catherine. We can keep the show rolling. Could you give us a brief rundown of the minutes from last meeting?
Definitely. So SO 2021-10 to an order amending the Constitution to prohibit student union investments in and consumption of forced labor was tabled to the Committee on the Constitution. Isabella Garcia was appointed to the Campus Life Council. Resolution 2021-17 to educate COVID-19 positive students upon release from isolation and provide post-discharge testing was passed. Thomas Davis reported the Committee on the Constitution's suggestions for SO 2021-09 on the reconfiguration of EPB, and a resolution in support of upholding the preponderance of evidence standard in Title IX and other sex-based misconduct cases was passed. and the resolution calling for the resignation of Father Jenkins due to his COVID-19 misconduct was not passed.
All right, any questions, comments, concerns on Catherine's minutes? All right, seeing none, minutes are approved and we can roll on to executive announcements. I can provide the first one, an update from this Tuesday's Faculty Senate meeting. We have a Faculty Senate meeting first Tuesday of every month, except for next month because that is election day, so it'll be the second Tuesday. But during this past meeting, we heard remarks from Marilyn Miranda, our provost, very productive, fruitful discussion on perhaps the incorporation of some sort of break in the spring semester. I think that students and faculty alike are very burnt out during week 9 of the semester without any sort of a break. And so I think that the administration is working on soliciting innovative solutions to this problem and trying to support student mental health. So if you guys have any salient points you'd like to bring up on this, we'll also be discussing this at the Student Advisory Group for campus reopening. We'd really like to hear your feedback on how some sort of a break may be incorporated into the spring semester for the morale of us all. We had reports from the standing committees of the Faculty Senate, which are Academic Affairs, Administrative Affairs, Benefits, Budget, and Infrastructure, as well as Student Affairs, which Abby Wolf and I are a part of. And we also had a motion of no confidence in Father Jenkins, which that was ultimately postponed. And the Faculty Senate went into an executive session. So alas, I was kicked out as a non-voting member. I would foresee them perhaps calling an extraordinary session in the coming weeks to discuss this matter, given the fact that we don't have another meeting for another 5 weeks. So I may foresee that in the future, but just wanted to keep you all aware that that motion was ultimately postponed at this week's meeting. And yeah, that's about it on the Faculty Senate side. I can hand it over to Rachel to talk about the Board of Trustees report, which we delivered this morning.
Thank you, Sarah. So if you don't know, Sarah, Aaron, and I get the chance to present to the Board of Trustees once a semester. In the first semester, they assign us a topic. And so what we were assigned to talk about today briefly was just the university's general response to the pandemic, the way that we've been adapting, things that we think have been positive, and ways that we think we could improve in the future. So I thought we had a very fruitful dialogue today. We kind of crowdsourced information from students in our cabinet and ultimately brought forth a few salient points that we found, which were adaptability, transparency, testing, mental health, and gathering spaces. So we talked about what we think has gone well, what our specific improvements would be in the future, and then we were able to have a little bit of a dialogue after the fact with some of the Board of Trustees members about mental health specifically. And I think that was a great conversation. Happy to have the chance to really dig in there and hopeful that that will lead to some work down the line that we'll be able to partner with them on that and hoping we can see some changes for the spring semester.
Sweet, thanks so much, Rachel, appreciate it. So there are only 2 updates for today, so we can move on to general orders. Our first being SO 2021-09, which is an order to amend the constitution of the undergraduate student body to transition the executive programming board from a student union branch to an Article 2 board. And I will invite Thomas Davis to get us acquainted with this order.
Hello, everyone. I'm back. Obviously, last week we had a discussion. This is the more formal and on paper version and up for debate and vote today. So thank you for this willingness. So Order SO 2021-09, following committee review or committee referral and review on behalf of the Committee on the Constitution, in order to amend the Constitution of the undergraduate student body to transition the executive programming board from a student union branch to an Article 2 board. Ordered by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame, Duloc, that the constitution of the undergraduate student body pursuant to section 1.5 of the same is hereby amended as follows. 1. Article 5 is hereby repealed, and all articles and references thereof and thereafter are renumbered accordingly. 2. Article 2, Section 3H is hereby amended as follows. H. Executive Programming Board. The Executive Programming Board shall serve as a forum for various student union branches to communicate and to collaborate on event coordination and student union programming. The Chief of Staff shall serve as chair of the Executive Programming Board, ensuring its proper operation. The Chief of Staff shall be responsible for distributing relevant information to all members of the Executive Programming Board and coordinating all meetings thereof. Each voting member of the Executive Programming Board shall hold a seat on the board ex officio for the duration of their respective term and shall possess the right of agenda. The following shall serve as members of the Executive Programming Board: Chief of Staff, CCC President and Division Chairs, 4 class presidents, Student Union Board Executive Director and Co-Directors of Programming, HPC Co-Chairs and Social Chairs, Off-Campus President, the Student Body President, Student Body Vice President, Judicial Council President, and the Chair of the Financial Management Board shall be permitted to attend and speak at all meetings of the Executive Programming Board, but they shall never be required to attend such meeting. Each special interest student union organization may elect to send 1 representative to attend meetings of the Executive Programming Board on their behalf. Such representatives shall be permitted to attend and speak at all meetings of the Executive Programming Board, but they shall never be required to attend such meeting. 3, Clause 6.3C3 is hereby repealed. 4, Clause 8.3D is repealed and the following clauses renumbered accordingly. 5, Clause 9.3D is repealed and the following clauses renumbered accordingly. It is so ordered. I will take questions. I'm sure there's plenty. So please. No, that's your job.
Ricardo.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you for bringing this to us. Reading this and seeing the previous order that was submitted a couple of weeks ago by Aaron, myself, and others, it seems the intent behind this order has been substantially altered. Again, very significantly from the original intention of the order. Now, I know that I serve in the Committee on the Constitution, and I am already privy to the decision-making process behind these changes. But for the benefit of the entire Senate, can you outline how and why these changes were made and why the intent of the order was so decisively shifted?
Yes, thank you, Ricardo, for that great question. So ultimately, the committee, as we discussed last week, saw it important to have some sort of body that was a mediator between all the different programming branches and student union special interest organizations to be able to come together to make sure they're collaborating, to make sure events aren't, corresponding at the same time, to make sure we're taking into account things like bookstore basketball, PRISM events, sub, class councils, all that stuff. Ultimately, Article 5 has served that purpose in a textual form, but in terms of actual logistics, it has failed. Well, that's a strong word, but it has not done its job. Ultimately, it has no funding reasons, it has no branch purpose, so it was decided that that should be moved into Article 2 under the Chief of Staff, who was originally the chair. In terms of why there has been a direct opposition to policy and that the new board under the Article 2 should be focused on programming, is just that if there are divisions of policy, if there is time for discussion of policy amongst the various branches, that can happen in an informal way or a formal way, but just not a constitutional mandate that such a committee or such a student union branch should exist for that purpose. So hopefully that answers that. If there's specifics, I'll field those definitely. I would acknowledge, not as the sponsor of this or as the presenter of this from the committee, but to Ricardo's point, this has been substantially altered from the original sponsors and co-sponsors, and I entirely agree with that. I will advise you all that there are options going forward here. Yes, you can vote on this, you can vote it down, you can vote it up. There is also the option that if you do believe that it's been substantially altered, the sponsors can make a motion to reject the committee's suggestions. That's ultimately up to all you. That would require a 2/3 vote to strike down such these suggestions here. And it would allow Aaron and the rest of the co-sponsors to represent their resolution or their order or subsequent order which I hope we could have further dialogue about. I don't want to hold this up too long, but it is another option that is at your behalf. So that's coming from me as parliamentarian and also as the presenter of this order. I want it to be fair and make sure that we have the best thing going forward.
Awesome. Thanks for that interchange, guys. Do we have any further questions for Thomas at this time? Oh, who do we got up there? Oh, it's Henry. Okay.
I would say that the committee, not in these explicit words, but through the philosophy of what we were able to talk about in short, is there is a concept that we have is the separation of powers per se in a constitution to make sure each branch is doing their responsible duty. There really is no format for all of those to come together in a specific way to address an issue that should be constitutionally mandated. If sub needs to coordinate with CCC, we'd love to see that. And they can do that through text, through meetings, through whatever it may be. But to place in the Constitution another requirement that these meetings shall happen, as we've seen with EPB, it was a branch that was required to meet, I think, 3 or 4 times a year. To think of all the events that all the student union branches program, all the policies that they have going on throughout the year, 3 to 4 meetings simply isn't enough. And there really is no purpose in raising that limit to make them meet more often because it's only another constitutional mandate that won't serve its purpose. Does that address that, Henry? Okay, thanks.
That was super helpful. Any further questions? Ricardo?
Motion to end questioning and move to debate.
All right, we can vote on that motion. Motion to end questioning, move to debate. Okay, wonderful. We are now in debate. Would anyone like to raise a point of debate? Aaron?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to get my 2 cents in as the main author of this Senate order. I would agree that with what Thomas said, this has been pretty altered from what the original intent of what the co-sponsors and I had originally written. That being said, I do want to express my gratitude for the Committee on the Constitution for their insight into this matter. And this is obviously no trivial task in, addressing one of the main articles of our Constitution. It is my opinion that this is pretty heavily altered, and for that reason, I cannot agree with the recommendations of the Committee on the Constitution in full. I do think that what they have returned to us has been just pretty much a reworking of what is the present Executive Programming Board, which is just not really what I think the student union and the student body needs right now, and I don't think would be effective in the long term. So for that reason, I would very much smile upon a motion to reject the recommendations of the Committee on the Constitution. That being said, I do think that the co-sponsors and I would be very happy to come back together and work on something that bridges the divide and comes together on something that meets in the middle that I think is really important. But that is just my point of view at this time. I'd love to hear what others think on that. But yeah.
Thanks, Aaron. Mairead? Sure, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, no, whatever suits you.
So as the executive director of SUB, I spoke to the rest of the SUB board members as well as our advisor, who actually also happens to be the advisor for the previous executive programming board. So she gives a little bit of insight. And basically, it was kind of, there's a consensus in SUB that this was just, again, like Aaron said, a reworking of the old executive programming board that wasn't super helpful, especially for SUB, who we're a really big organization and we like to collaborate with a lot of different student groups. We collaborate with a lot of clubs. We collaborate with student government, but when we do it, we will be collaborating with a specific department, like student life department in student government. We will be collaborating with the president of the club in the that falls under the CCC. So for us, it's a little bit less productive to be having me meeting with Ricardo, meeting with Aaron, when really I could be meeting with the director of student life and the director of the engagement department, as well as a president or two of some of the clubs that Ricardo's in charge of. So, and also our advisor who is an advisor for the executive program board agreed with us that really there isn't a need for this central student union programming board, and it's much more effective to just have direct conversations between the actual presidents or heads or chairs of departments that are actually collaborating on an event, rather than having this like massive, just like all the people that oversee the different organizations, that when they meet, it's very much just like an update on the calendar and not actually like collaboration on ideas and events. So it's not really serving the student union as best as it could be. So like we kind of decided that from Sub's perspective, like we would be fine with the elimination of the executive programming board, and we felt like we have been effective in collaborating with other organizations and other clubs and other special interest groups in the student union without this committee. So that's just my 2 cents from Sub's perspective.
Thanks, Mairead. We'll have Ricardo.
I am planning to make a motion towards the latter part of my debate, so of my point, so it might be expeditious to have the others voice in first. That said, I'm happy to provide a few initial thoughts. First of all, I just want to thank Thomas for his leadership of the Committee on the Constitution. Having served in the same, I fully think that there may be something that can be reworked from the prop board into a fashion that is effective at achieving its purpose here on campus. That said, the reworking of this has substantially altered the original intent of the order. And I do think it is valuable to have such a committee as the one that we, I speak on behalf of hopefully Aaron and Michael sponsors, originally proposed when we came with SO 2021-9 to the Senate. That said, I don't think we have to be completely, just pull this down and forget about it forever. I think there is fertile ground in what the Committee on the Constitution has reworked this order into. So I think that there may be some validity in saying that perhaps we can reject those changes now, but continue that discussion in the Committee on the Constitution to see if there is indeed a way in which we can rework the prop board into something that achieves that programming purpose on campus. And again, that will eventually be a decision for the Senate to make, but I think there is a valuable conversation to be had there. That said, at this time, I don't see any further points.
Oh, I think, Ricardo, that David was there. Do you mind if he proceeds before you make the motion?
Please.
Okay, thank you. Very considerate of you.
Sure.
David, would you like to speak your piece?
Yeah, I have a statement from Matthew. So
Oh, great.
All right, this is a statement that Judicial Council President Matthew Bisner asked me to share. So last spring in SS 2021-09, the Senate called the Committee on the Constitution to propose revisions to the Student Union Constitution to remove unnecessary operational procedures. We've established that as it currently exists, Article 5 adds very little, if any, value to the Constitution. Past proposed amendments to fix it have wound up repeating the purpose section of the article over again as powers and duties without a clear-cut reason why it should occupy its own constitutional article. As it stands before the Senate, the amendment handling the Executive Programming Board's future is the best option available to the student union for 2 main reasons: brevity and precedent. So brevity, what had been handled in the better part of an entire page, page 17 in your current copy of the Constitution, has been consolidated into a single subsection with defined composition, attendance expectations, purpose, and authority. By handling so much information in a dense and well-worded subsection, the members of the Committee on the Constitution have shown the possibilities available to us through good writing. And then precedent available to us lies actually in the Senate's article, where both the committees on the budget and the Constitution are composed and empowered. In actuality, the EPB as it currently exists and as it is imagined in this order has less power to directly affect change than those committees, and it functions more as an informal body for discussion and coordination. Yet members of the student union find it is in our best interest to explicitly lay out the EPB in the Constitution. Rather than giving it its own constitutional article, therefore, it is appropriate and advisable to consider housing it under its legitimate authority, here being the Chief of Staff. Similarly, the Student Union Ethics Commission does not have its own article, even though it too is made up of members across the student union and housed under the Judicial Council. For these reasons, I fully endorse the recommendation of the Committee on the Constitution and ask the voting members to approve its passage.
Thank you, David. Yeah, Madison? I think Aaron could answer that. Yeah, go for it.
So I will speak in my role as Chief of Staff and Chair of the current Executive Programming Board, and as the main author of 2021-09. I would say that's twofold. One, I think my main issues are that what the Committee on the Constitution returned was just a reworking of EPB, which I think as much as you want to rework EPB, it's not going to be effective and it's not going to be constructive. And at the end of the day, it's not going to serve the student body as best as we can, which is what we are all called to do. So I have problems, one, with both ends of it, policy and programming. I think that there is opportunities for the entire student union to come together on issues of policy. That in no way takes away from the other duties that all of the different branches have. There are very clear issues that I think that we can all come together and commit to as a student union. One, for example, anti-racism, something that we can all work on together from the different branches. And two, on the membership side, I think that's something that the co-sponsors and I would definitely want to rework and talk about in full. So that's at least where I'm coming from my perspective. And to respond to what David just offered up from the Judicial Council, I completely agree. I don't think that the executive committee, which is what I had envisioned and had originally proposed as its own article, needs to be its own article. I think that's something that the co-sponsors and I would be very happy to go back to and, accept some of the recommendations of the Committee on the Constitution and their wisdom that they offered to us. But again, I think it's a middle path and there are some issues that I think or some perspectives that we would, reject on that end.
Yes, Ricardo.
So I think these recent discussion points have really crystallized, I guess, what I was thinking about. And I do think that the middle path is the best approach moving forward. I think this order should establish the executive committee as a subsection or a section actually under the chief of staff. And then we can look at an ancillary process to revise the board into perhaps something that could, again, achieve its mission. As Aaron expressed, I also have my concerns about the efficacy at which it can be work, but I think that's a discussion for future time. Currently, we are discussing the order that I guess we have originally proposed in the provisions made by Concom pertaining to that order. So with these thoughts in mind, I am hereby motioning to reject the provisions made by the Committee on the Constitution. That is the wording that has to be said. And no hard feelings, Thomas. I look forward to discussing this next Wednesday. Hopefully not getting roasted.
Okay, thank you very much, Ricardo. Do I hear a second on that motion?
I second the motion.
Why, thank you, Sam. All right. Lovely. So Thomas has created a Google form linked right under General Order A. I think this is definitely a Google form moment. If you all would like to, it's coming to life, Thomas says. So just to clarify, you can vote to reject the ComCon SO 2021-09 suggestion, or you can vote no, I do not reject. So we'll give you folks a minute.
Sarah,
Yes.
no, you have from
Ricardo, yeah.
So before, I guess we engage in what I guess it is a little bit late now, but I did want to add a clarifying point that these two avenues are not necessarily mutually exclusive. We can pursue ahead with both. That said, given the original intent of this resolution, I do think it is more germane to reject these provisions at this point, and then consider those provisions perhaps in the future as their own separate order. So I hereby, I guess, encourage you all to reject these provisions. No hard feelings.
Thank you, Ricardo. All right, folks, 30 more seconds. All right, it looks like votes are in. Let me just verify. What is the percentage we're looking for? Okay, fabulous. All right, so the suggestion was rejected, but I would just like to reiterate, I think that we very much see a middle path forward, incorporating a lot of the valid points of the suggestion that we were very pleased they raised, and hopefully creating an amalgamation in the future that takes the best of both ideas. So thank you all so much for going on that journey with us. We can proceed to SO 2021-11, which is an order to adjust the spring semester schedule. David, I'm sorry you will be speaking a lot today, but I think this is incredibly important. It really as succinct as it can be. So I would invite you to come on down and give this one a read.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And yeah, like she said, this is a long one. It's very technical, so bear with me here and I'll try to get through it quickly. So as you all know, the spring semester is changing and there are a bunch of constitutional dates that must change with it. So this is in order to adjust the spring semester schedule. Whereas extenuating circumstances that dramatically affect the current state of affairs of the student body have arisen due to the global pandemic, COVID-19, whereas the university has responded by modifying the academic calendar for the spring semester of 2021, such that the semester begins 3 weeks and 1 day later than it typically would. Whereas the first day of classes of the spring semester, when petitions for student body president and vice president are typically distributed, falls on a Wednesday rather than a Tuesday for the spring semester of 2021. Whereas the Constitution mandates inflexible deadlines of March 3rd and March 8th for class officers and hall senators respectively. Whereas the above deadlines fall 3 weeks and 1 day earlier relative to the start of the semester than is typical, and would therefore not permit the Judicial Council Vice President of Elections to effectively coordinate class officer and hall elections. Whereas the Constitution calls the Student Union Senate serving in the 2021 to 2022 term to meet every week beginning April 1st, 2021. Whereas the postponement of hall senator elections would require a similar postponement of the Senate's term to permit time for the constitutionally required transition activities of incoming senators. Whereas the Constitution calls the 2021 to 2022 Hall President's Council co-chairs to take office in place of the 2020 to 2021 HPC co-chairs on April 1st, 2021. Whereas the Constitution calls the 2020 to 2021 HPC to select the 2021 to 2022 HPC co-chairs by the third Friday in March. Whereas the postponement of hall elections would require an extension of the term of the current HPC to permit it to fulfill its constitutional obligation to select the next HPC co-chairs. Whereas the student body president is expected to hold a meeting with law enforcement leaders in the month of January before the 2021 spring semester will begin. Whereas the Constitution also mandates an inflexible deadline of February 1st for the FMB annual review of allocations. Whereas this deadline, falling before the first day of classes of the 2021 spring semester, would not allow the FMB to complete its review of allocations during the spring semester. Therefore, be it ordered by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame du Lac that the Constitution of the undergraduate student body, pursuant to Article 3, Section 3Q of the same, is hereby suspended as follows. The words petitions will be made available at noon on the first Tuesday of classes of the second semester. The deadline for filing of all petitions is noon of the Friday of the following week, are hereby suspended in Article 17, Sections 2K3. The words the class officers' elections shall be held before March 3rd each year are hereby suspended in Article 17, Section 2M1. The words the election for senator shall be held prior to March 8th of each year are hereby suspended in Article 17, Section 3B1. The words each Senate member shall serve a one-year term beginning on April 1st of the year elected are hereby suspended in Article 17, Section 3B1, with specific application to the Senate's the 2020 to 2021, 2021-22 terms. We shall instead transition on April 8th, 2020. The words prior to the third Friday in March of each year are hereby suspended in Article 7, Section 4A, with specific application of the 2020 to 2021 HPC. The words the HPC co-chair shall serve a one-year term beginning on April 1st of the year elected are hereby suspended in Article 7, Section 4A1, with specific application to the 2020, 2021, and 2021, 2022 HPC co-chairs. Article 2, Section 1K2 is hereby suspended with specific application to the 2021 spring semester. The words prior to the third Thursday in February in Article 11, Section 3A1, and March 1st in Article 11, Section 3A2 are hereby suspended for the Student Union Treasurer transition process, which shall instead take place on March 15th. The words by February 1st are hereby suspended in Article 11, Section 4H, with specific application to the 2020-2021 term of the FMB, and that the Judicial Council Election Committee is hereby called to action as follows. The Judicial Council Election Committee shall make petitions available for the student body president and vice president elections on the first day of classes of the spring semester to be due at noon on the Friday of the following week. Judicial Council Election Committee shall complete the elections of the 2020-2021 class council officers by March 25th. Judicial Council Election Committee shall complete the elections of the 2020-2021 residence hall senators by March 30th. At the HPC is hereby called to action as follows. The 2020-2021 HPC shall elect 2 members to serve as co-chairs for the following year prior to the second Friday in April of 2021. The 2021-2022 HPC co-chair shall serve a term beginning on April 15th, 2021, and ending on April 1st, 2022. The student body president is hereby called to action as follows. Student body president shall schedule and chair a meeting between university leaders and local law enforcement leaders in accordance with Article 2, Section 1K in the month of February 2021. The Financial Management Board and its members are hereby called to action as follows. Student Union Treasurer shall nominate to the Student Senate one of the assistants to the Student Union Treasurer as a replacement prior to the first Thursday in March of the 2021 spring semester for review and approval by the Senate by March 15, 2021. 2021-2022 Student Union Treasurer shall serve a term beginning on March 15, 2021, and then on March 1st, 2022. FMB shall conduct their winter reallocation process by February 17th. It is so ordered. Thank you, and I appreciate any questions that could clarify.
Thank you so much, David. I know a lot of work went into this. There was a lot of nitty gritty, but very much appreciated for the transition of the student union in the spring. So any questions for David or Judicial Council in general? Yes, Ricardo.
Thank you very much for your diligence. I just want to say, starting off, for, I guess, anticipating this coming up. Should we expect any future orders to this effect or similar effects regarding scheduling for next semester in the future? Or
Yeah.
is it sort of going to take care of all the problems?
This is intended to be comprehensive, but if any other issues arise, that could certainly happen. This is intended to be comprehensive. We'll see.
Thank you again for your due diligence.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Any further questions? Do I see? Oh, it's Ben Earhart. Yes, I'm so sorry, guys. The lights. Go ahead.
I hate to be nitpicky, but I don't know why this one stuck out to me. Was point 4, you make underneath order by the student senate. You talk about each senate member shall serve a 1-year term, yada yada. Is the transition date April 8th, 2020 or 2021? I don't know why that.
Yeah, let's just say 2021. Thank you for catching that, and we'd smile upon a friendly amendment.
Yeah, motion, make a friendly amendment. So rewrite April 8th, 2020 to be April 8th, 2021.
All is good. Yeah, that can be made. Beautiful. Great
Yeah,
eye,
thank you,
Ben. I
Ben.
did not even catch that one. Fabulous. Okay. Any other questions? What do we got? What do we got? I saw Kurt pointing to, oh, it's Isabella. Yes, go for it. All right, let's vote on that motion. Great. We have ended questioning and are now in debate. Does anyone have a point of debate they would like to raise at this time? Oh, Thomas.
Pass this. This is great. I didn't do any work. My name's on it for capacity, but David did a fantastic job. Last year we had, as you know, when you transitioned in, we had like 5 or 6 of these, I think. I didn't do a very good job. Also, you should know that this requires 5/6 of a vote because you're suspending constitutional clauses. So if you have any debate and before you vote, just keep that in mind. That's a high requirement.
Very helpful reminder. Thank you, Thomas. Yes, Ricardo.
Yeah, in order to pass this, motion to end debate and move to a vote. Second.
All right, let's vote on that motion. Great. Thank you so much, David. We are now in a vote over SO 2021-11. Because this does require 5/6, Thomas has also made a Google form. So it's just been moved down to item B. So if you guys open that up, I'll give you guys a minute to vote. Yeah, go for it. All right, folks, 30 more seconds. Oh, great. Okay. Passes unanimously. Thank you all, and especially thank you, David and Matthew. Exciting. We will have a seamless transition. Fingers crossed. All right. Moving right along, we have SS 2021-19, a resolution formally disapproving Reverend John Jenkins' violations of university health policy and encouraging further action. And I would invite any of the listed co-sponsors to come on down and read that to us. Awesome. Thank you, Patrick Lee.
Hey, guys. Two quick things before we start. Thanks to everybody who signed on and helped with this. It was really a team effort. And two, this is just more of a thing about Notre Dame and Jenkins and not a comment on anything else. So without further ado, a resolution formally disapproving Reverend John Jenkins' violation of university health policy and encouraging further action. Whereas Section 3, Article 1 of the Student Union Constitution states that the purpose of the Student Senate is to formulate and advance the position of the undergraduate student body on all issues concerning campus life. Whereas on Saturday, September 26, 2020, Reverend John Jenkins, CSC, President of the University of Notre Dame, was in attendance for the nomination of Notre Dame Law School graduate Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court of the United States at the White House Rose Garden. Whereas Father Jenkins was clearly seen photographed not wearing a mask while shaking hands with, interacting with, and sitting in close proximity to other attendees of the SCOTUS nomination, most of whom were also unmasked. Whereas, despite all members present in the Rose Garden being tested prior to the event, per university spokesperson Paul J. Brown, it is known that rapid tests are capable of producing false negatives, per the CDC. Further, students on campus who have recently tested negative for COVID-19 at Notre Dame in surveillance testing or have recovered from COVID-19 are still required to wear masks at all times on campus, both indoors and outdoors, and remain physically distant from others at all times. Whereas, it is the position of the Student Senate that Father Jenkins' actions directly and publicly violate university COVID-19 policies related to mask wearing and physical distancing. Whereas, it is disheartening for the student body, faculty, and staff to witness such actions during a time when all members of the university are being asked to act prudently for the sake of the physical safety of the Notre Dame community, the physical safety of the South Bend community, and the furthering of Notre Dame's academic mission as a university. Whereas, there must be appropriate consequences for all actions in violation of university policy, whether the perpetrator is a member of the student body, faculty, staff, or administration, in order to reinforce the responsibility we are all called to at Notre Dame to protect the physical health of the community. Whereas, despite Father Jenkins sharing his sincerest apologies and announcing his decision to self-quarantine in a communication to the Notre Dame community on Monday, September 28th, an apology and decision the Student Senate recognizes and accepts, it is apparent that frustrations are still clearly present among members of the campus community, demanding more to be done to remedy this mistake. Whereas, the Student Senate recognizes the valid frustrations of the student body in response to this incident and believes that these frustrations and this incident as a whole highlight potential areas for improvement in current university COVID-19 policies. Whereas, the Student Senate believes that it is possible to respond to the aforementioned frustrations in a respectful, constructive, and compassionate manner that benefits all members of the Notre Dame community. Whereas, it is the position of the Student Senate that potential starting points to productively better the student experience at Notre Dame after this incident include joint reviews of and discussions with university administrators about university COVID-19 policies. Resolved, in regards to Father John Jenkins' decision to attend the SCOTUS nomination without wearing a mask or observing Notre Dame's physical distancing policy, the Student Senate formally disapproves of this choice for the reasons stated above, encourages Father Jenkins to complete his appropriate quarantine period, and asks that he reviews elements of COVID-19 leadership training administered at Team ND to members of the Student Union. And be it further resolved, the Student Senate respectfully requests that members of university administration engage in discussion with student leaders regarding the review and potential amendment of certain university campus life COVID-19 policies in the coming weeks to address frustrations of the student body in a constructive, respectful, and timely manner. And also, this was written before it came out that Father Jenkins unfortunately tested positive, and we all obviously hope for his health and speedy recovery.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I'll now open the floor up to any questions, and I'll just remind you that these questions can be directed towards Patrick or any of the listed co-sponsors. Yes, is that Miles?
Yeah.
Go for it.
First of all, thanks, Patrick, for reading that. Thanks for all the sponsors for putting this out, especially how quickly it was. I know it was ready for last week, but like it couldn't get in because of all the agenda that was already there. I talked to a few people about this resolution, especially in light of what was released last week. And while what I thought released what was we debated and eventually voted down last week was a bit harsh, based on the conversations I've had with others, some think this is on the other end could be stronger. So why do you or any of the other co-sponsors think that this is enough? This will be a positive influence and won't be an empty gesture. And that's just basically my question. Why do you think this is the right happy medium?
Right. Thanks, Miles. And two things. And if any of the co-sponsors want to jump in after this, that would be awesome as well. But the way I see this resolution working is in two main capacities. One, I see the job of the Student Senate as to represent the sentiment of the student body. That's why we were elected. And I think that campus, after seeing those pictures and everything, was a little bit upset. Not so enraged as to call for his resignation, as we heard last week and you said, but the sentiment was we were a little miffed because, you know, we've been working all semester to keep ourselves safe and keep each other safe, and we're making these sacrifices. And we would hope that he would hold himself to the same standard, regardless of whether or not there was testing. So the first function of this resolution I see as to represent and to hold up to the administration and say, hey, like, we're a little bit angry, a little bit upset. And the second one I would say, and I'm anticipating a few questions and comments on this, but also regarding the COVID-19 leadership training administered at Team ND. I think everybody knows on campus that action should have consequences. And while we did regard the resolution last week as slightly extreme, I thought there was a pretty valid point made that there are a lot of students going through disciplinary processes right now because they didn't comply. And while no one has any power to, force anybody in the administration to really do anything. I think it's important that we stand by the fact that actions have consequences and that this training might be symbolic and nobody might do it and they might not even look at it, but we still think that action should have consequences. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Patrick. Would any of the other co-sponsors like to speak to that? Niels.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that a little bit because I think we did give a considerable amount of time and energy towards like where we wanted to fall between, writing a resolution that really had no tangible effects and writing a resolution that would just be like scoffed at by the administration and then would just be another point diluting the voice of the student senate. And so I don't know, like, how much you thought about, like, I don't know, Miles here, like, about something tangible that Jenkins could do to kind of remedy the situation. It's a little tricky to ask yourself, like, okay, what is an action that the president of the university can do that is both worthwhile at the time, saves space, and gives the students some call to say, like, okay, this is a man with whom I trust and is capable of leading the student body. And I think in our resolution, we tried to find that medium. And we tried to like Patrick said, call him to the same standards that we try to hold ourselves accountable to. But yeah, I think that would absolutely be worth debating. I think we have some better ideas.
Thanks so much, Niels. Would anyone else like to add? That's Michael Murakami. Go for it.
Yeah, I also would like to kind of reaffirm that sentiment in a little bit of a different way. I think that because Father Jenkins, like, action should have consequences, but Father Jenkins is in a different position than the students are. His position being of power over us. And so I think, I personally thought, and probably wrote this resolution, that having him do the Team ND training was pointless because he's the one who organized the Team ND training. I was not for that. But what I think the main thing to come out of this resolution should be and is asking for the meeting with him about the COVID policy. He's the one who has the final say in changing. it's not as much about punishing him for what he did wrong. He did wrong, he deserves to be punished, fine. But it's more about remedying it by allowing the students to see that change is possible in a way that is safe and that can be seen as long-term success. And not simply make something unjust and feel stop. And so I think it's important to look at more the second result so that we want to have the meeting with them as constructive change and not just have a blank statement.
Yeah, Ben.
Speaking to that point exactly, the very next journal order we have is a resolution that effectively addresses one of these COVID policies that Patrick and I co-sponsored together. So regarding your point of what does this do constructively and building on what Michael just said, the takeaway here is, we can take it, don't take these words, but take advantage of the situation in a constructive way that helps the student body. And I think, looking at policies in the short term, at least, and finding out where are there discrepancies that we can fix now, that's the first step.
It's helpful. Thank you, Ben. Renee.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also helped write this, co-sponsor this resolution, and to the point about the team and training, the point of that for me, it does seem kind of like an empty gesture, and I totally understand that perspective, but it's clear that Father Jenkins didn't have a full understanding of the COVID protocols and what was kind of expected as a part of this pandemic of him and what's expected of the rest of us. And I think that it's very clear and very concrete that all of us had to do COVID training, student government and just the general student body had to do that online training before you got to campus. But I don't know if there's really any proof out there, unless anyone knows any different, that Father Jenkins had to complete any sort of training. So I think that the point of doing the COVID training is just to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page with these protocols, because he sort of demonstrated by his actions that he wasn't totally aware of sort of the expectations. So that's, I think, where that part of that is coming from, if that helps anybody understand that.
Thanks, Renee. Do you have a question, lady?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So this is mostly for Patrick or Ben, but anyone can answer it. So are there any other specific things that you guys want to see changed in regards to the COVID-19 policy other than the resolution that's coming up, or is that just kind of a general statement?
My honest answer is I haven't had enough time to look for things that I'd want to change further. I think the first one that came to mind was the residence hall policy. This is a preview, but as we all know, the administration announced that they're considering doing what we're asking them to do. So the resolution that Patrick and I wrote, which we started writing before that announcement was made, is more just to encourage them, hey, we think we can move along with this because we think that we're already allowed to do certain things in order to clear up a discrepancy. But there's nothing specific off the top of my mind beyond that.
Yeah, and just to follow up, I think that, what we have next up is going to be, it's a really well-written resolution that addresses something I think very necessary moving forward with the dorms. But student government is just larger than the Senate. I know people in the Department of Student Life who are working really hard with, and a lot of other departments as well, who are working with campus dining and who are working with, people who run the public spaces to maybe try and open up a little bit more. We all know the weather's getting colder. And I think what Ben said about quote, taking advantage of, if this brings people to the table to say, hey, what do you guys see and what do you want? Let's strike while the iron is hot. And we have a lot of good minds here together. And I just think that hopefully this kind of encourages us to pool all of our good ideas and say, hey, what can we do to ensure that the last weeks and months of this semester is as good and enjoyable and safe as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, Michael Murakami.
Yeah, if I could just chip in too, I think that no matter what the end thing we ask for in this resolution is, the biggest aspect I want to emphasize is that the Student Senate wants to promote something that's safe. And so we want to have the conversation and not request a blanket idea that would be unsafe in implementation. We want to create and have the conversations so we understand what would be safe and what they think would be safe, and not what we from the outside. And so it's not about us suggesting material policies right now, because we don't have the scientific data in the paper. It's more about getting to the table and being able to have conversations so that we can find out what's safe and then implement that. We have a better student-like experience, while also not following the material available products that we do.
Thanks, Michael. Henry, did you have your hand up? Okay, yeah, go for it.
This is Patrick. I just wanted to ask, given recent developments, I mean, you've seen that in the national press and stuff like that, this has become a kind of issue. People are taking interest in this, and I think that Father Jenkins is under significant pressure to consider his position at this university. Do you think that this condemnation could add to that effect, which was clearly that's not its intention, but do you think it has an impact on that situation?
I think it could, but I think that it's not really our job to consider whether or not. I think, as I said earlier, it's more of our focus to represent the student body, and I hope this resolution does a good job of doing so. And I guess it has kind of evolved into a larger story over the past 2 or 3 days, which is interesting because it happened a while ago. I don't know where the delay comes from, but I think this is a pretty level-headed, reasoned statement about our feeling and then where we want to go from there. And I hope it doesn't, come off as reactionary or inflammatory towards anything that we don't actually think. So again, I feel like we've said this a few times in Senate, but I would just hope that we look at the what's said in the resolution, and hopefully that comes across as what is true. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Any further questions? Is that Dan up there? Go for it.
I would just kind of like to reiterate what I said last week to the petition calling for his resignation. I think Father Jenkins is, all things considered, doing a pretty good job with leading this school and coming up with different things. I think it's safe to say he knows what COVID is, considering he was at the forefront of bringing us back to the campus. I just don't see how having all these reprimandments toward him is going to help foster a dialogue, which makes, I guess, more freedoms for the students on campus, because we're essentially asking for him to be punished to the fullest extent by his kind of ideology. Well, why are we going to ask for him to be punished and then be frustrated when we get punished for breaking COVID rules like not having a mask on in the dorms? It just seems counterintuitive.
Sure, Patrick, go ahead and respond.
Yeah, I hope that it doesn't come off as disdain on his job as the university president whatsoever. I was and am still extremely proud that we were one of the first schools to say, hey, living on campus is so important to us that we are going to take the risk and take on the logistical task of bringing everyone back. And I also hope that it doesn't come across as punishing him to the fullest extent. I've heard stories, and this is all, nothing factual, but there are a lot of kids who are going through hearings and procedures because they did break the rules, and it's going to be a lot worse than reviewing the COVID-19 policy. So while we can't, as I said, do anything maybe more than requesting a review of guidelines to Father Jenkins, I think that, as I said, doing something, I don't know if this is the fullest extent. I don't know what that would be, but I hope it doesn't come across as like us really bashing him and being against what he is and does, because I, at least personally, think that he's done a really good job in this time of crisis.
Thank you, Patrick. I'll remind you all that it is 7 p.m. and we have one more resolution that would be great to get to. So would smile upon a resolution to end questioning and move to debate.
Motion to end questioning, move to debate.
Great, we can vote on that motion. All in favor? Fabulous. Okay, we've entered debate on this resolution. Any points of the debate that anyone would like to raise? Yes, Lainey.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone that wrote this and then also offer my support as well. I feel like it's a really well-written resolution and kind of encompasses all the sentiments that the students are feeling right now. I know at least a lot of my constituents are really frustrated with the situation. And I kind of agree with everything that you guys are saying. Like, we should take advantage of what's going on right now, because I feel like it is infuriating a lot of people, the things we're going through when obviously I don't know, I'm not a scientist, they have all this more information, but what's the difference between us sitting in a 24-hour lounge and us sitting in Dublin Student Center together? And so as it's getting colder, I feel like this is a great opportunity for us to bring this up to the administration. I feel like this resolution does a great job of kind of giving us a pathway to get there.
Great, thank you so much. Grace Stevenson over Zoom, her hand is up, so I will call on her.
Hi, everyone. I know I'm not there in person, and I know that I don't have voting privileges, but I wanted to bring up something that I think addresses a lot of what we've been talking about, which is I'm in a CSC leadership class, and we devoted a lot of last night to talking about what we think the appropriate action is going forward. And I think that's a crucial word here, is action, something that Senate has really struggled with, the line between writing and supporting verbally versus taking concrete action. And that is all to say that we discussed the idea of holding a town hall, which is an actionable step that brings Jenkins and other invested community members, whether it's members from the Student Senate, members from the Faculty Senate, members with health problems like me, members who have young children or immunocompromised family at home, people who have a stake in this issue, to kind of have this dialogue and debate, not in these silos, like in the Faculty Senate, Student Senate, in our halls, at dinner, whatever it may be. And I think that a town hall, and again, this is more of like a framework, and this is definitely just a suggestion and could potentially be its own resolution, but it basically says, we do not stand for Jenkins' actions. I support that part of the resolution wholeheartedly, but it also says that there is a lot of good that he has done, and we deserve to hear him out, and we deserve to be able to move forward from this, because I think the one thing that's missing from this resolution, and probably the reason that the resolution didn't pass last week, is that I don't think Jenkins resigning or Jenkins being completely cleared would provide anyone a sense of justice, or that this was a morally appropriate action to take. And so again, not a voting member, encourage you all to think about that. But I think adding an opportunity for a lot of people to come to the table and have a very open and honest conversation might provide a lot of parties across campus with a sense of kind of, if not peace or contentment, an ability to move forward, because I think that we're going to continue to have challenges, and kind of dwelling in this anger and resentment, no matter what your position on the issue is, I don't think is productive going forward.
Thanks so much, Grace. David.
Good, thank you. Judicial Council President Visner also asked me to share a statement here. In the interest of time, I'll summarize a few things. We agree with Grace very much that action is important, and with the idea of a town hall or a listening session in which all members of the community could voice their concerns to President Jenkins, would be more productive than more of a vaguely worded conversation with student leaders, which is already going to happen in the scheduled campus life council updates in the first place. Further actions could include interfaith prayer services for the more than 210,000 people in the United States who passed away fighting COVID-19, as well as the order which is coming up, or the resolution, SS 2021-20. It's a much better written resolution. It evidences the fact that the sponsors spoke with leaders in various campus offices. In contrast to this resolution, it advances a specific policy. That's the sort of action that we should be taking, rather than, in words of the sponsors of this resolution, diluting the influence of the student side.
Thank you, David. Yes, Niels.
If I may speak to a direct quote of mine, I think that these resolutions are kind of taking different alleyways towards approaching a similar problem. I think that whereas SS 2021-20 is a program-oriented resolution, SS 2021-19 is more oriented towards a specific action of our university president. And as we've discussed, I think that a lot of like what we're suggesting would actually be in the best interest of the university president. And I think it would be a way to kind of mend the bridge between student life and administration, insofar as we've had this grievance that has, as you said, kind of made a lot of our constituents very agitated. And we're recommending a resolution that would allow our president to, I don't know, kind of keep the faith between these parties. Whereas SS 2021-20 is more program oriented, like I said, and really doesn't have anything to do with administration student tension. So I think that quote was kind of, not exactly maybe where it should have been.
Thanks, Niels. Any further points of the debate? Is that Molly?
Yep. I definitely thank you to the writers. This is very well written and everything, but I agree that this feels very empty and not actionable. The resolution treats Jenkins as if he made an innocent mistake, unaware of the COVID policies, as if he could not read all of the signs that say, here we wear masks. The ones at the edge of campus, here are responsibilities, do not end at the edge of campus. He went off campus, he acted very against all of the policies, and and he took off his mask, arguably as a political move involving Notre Dame and different things that we should not have been hiding ourselves with, going against all of the policies. And in this resolution, we say we recognize his heartfelt apology, which was a list of excuses that did not have the word sorry in it. I don't feel like this resolution is clear enough.
Thank you, Molly. Miles?
As a person who asked the question initially, like, why do you think this is like the middle ground? I did do a little research myself into, basically, I was upset about what seemed like clear hypocrisy from Father Jenkins. So I looked up, how would a student be treated had they done something similar to what Father Jenkins did? And so I looked up the COVID policy on the HERE website, and they really left a lot of leeway for themselves. They basically said, like, depending on whether an alleged offender is faculty, student, or staff, the appropriate office will investigate more serious violations. And basically saying sanctions may include this. The university may take action here. So there isn't a specific thing that I feel like, a specific action that we could say, we want Father Jenkins to have this discipline or that discipline, which is why I support this resolution. I think that since there isn't a specific policy enforcement that I could find that would, I think, apply to Father Jenkins in this situation, I think it would not be okay to just leave this issue lie. I think we need to make some form of statement to say we disapprove, and I think this resolution comes about as close to that as we can. And also, just kind of as a last thing, like, I fully support the town hall idea. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, Miles. Other points of debate? Yes, Ben.
Noting the time and noting everybody else's comments, and interest in maybe considering the next general order, I motion to end debate and move to a vote.
All right. We can vote on that motion. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, great. We are now in a vote over SS 2021-19, and I see that Thomas Davis has moved our handy Google link down under C. So I will give you all 1 minute to vote on that Google form.
Should I do the Jeopardy music? I don't want to be too bold. They can hear me. Maybe at a more informal meeting. Although I'm tempted, I will say.
What do you say?
I'm tempted, I will say.
I think it'd be kind of funny.
Maybe on the next
It's the
vote.
news.
Yeah.
Students. James.
Yep. Okay, wonderful. All of the votes are in and it passes with 75% yes. So thank you all for your participation. And look forward to taking further steps of action, including Ben's already coming down, SS 2021-20, which is a resolution encouraging the further adjustment of current on-campus residence hall visitation policies to promote student well-being while continuing to prevent the spread of COVID-19. All you, Ben.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Noting the time, I'm going to try and roll through this as quickly as I can. So yes.
And if you don't want to read every word verbatim,
Yeah.
it is all right if you just present a brief summary.
Sounds good. That is what I plan on doing. So I'll just kind of walk through it, give a generalized summary as I go. So in general, this resolution is addressing the current residence hall visitor policies, which, as we all know, and as I stated earlier, they are adjusting. So what it originally was asking administration to consider letting visitors into 2 floor spaces, common spaces, et cetera. Now it's just more of an encouraging push saying, hey, this is a great idea. Here's why we think you should move on a little more quickly. So in general, the first whereas covers the current residence hall visitor policies. We recognize their previous announcement regarding that visitors may be allowed in terms of you can visit anyone in your hall. The next few whereas statements talk about how the Office of Student Affairs, Student Activities Office, they have been providing outdoor spaces. However, the upcoming winter climate is going to present a challenge to utilizing these outdoor spaces.
one important thing I want to highlight here is whereas a critical aspect of a student's collegiate experience, particularly at Notre Dame, where the mind will not be cultivated at the expense of the heart, Blessed Basil Moreau's famous quote, is the opportunity for informal and spontaneous social interaction with classmates, peers, and friends. So that's really what I'm trying to promote here, is the opportunity for more of that in the winter months when it's harder to do so outside. Where the position of the Student Senate is that the current policies will continue to promote necessary physical safety, but could potentially jeopardize student well-being if the weather cools and students are unable to socialize in person with friends who live outside of their residence hall community. Whereas as a position of the Student Senate, this resolution is not meant to undermine the physical, the policies in place that ensure physical health and safety, but to highlight a potential discrepancy in current COVID-19 student life policies that, if resolved, could improve the social well-being of students while minimally increasing the risk of COVID-19 spread on campus. Let's see. And then just hitting on the points that I know Lainey mentioned earlier, we're allowed to gather in areas, indoor spaces. We're already allowed to do this in all of our classrooms. We're allowed to do this in the library. We're allowed to do this. Now we can do it in the dining halls. And our numbers are low. So we're not in a terrible spot with our COVID numbers. I think we all know that. So just a few points to try and understand where we're at right now. Then referring to the fact that masks work, as Erin Hoffman-Harding spoke to us a few weeks ago in September, she indicated that there has been no transmission in classrooms, there's been no transmission at programming. And what is the key link there in terms of physical policies? We're all wearing masks and we're observing occupancy limits. Let's see. Again, we're allowed to eat in dining halls now. The university has expanded its ability to test, prevent, and detect COVID cases. A number that I want to point out is like 14,500. That's the number of random surveillance tests that have been conducted since we resumed in-person classes, and that number continues to rise by several hundred per day. Let's see. Is the position of the Student Senate that mask wearing and occupancy observance should and must be effectively enforced by hall staff and residents of residence halls. It's not very difficult to ask people to keep wearing masks. It's not very difficult to make sure not too many people are there. And this is a kind of policy that can be tailored depending on residence halls. And there's 32 different residence halls, 32 different physical buildings, 32 different communities, 32 different COVID situations, if you will. So I think giving rectors the authority to decide maybe which spaces are allowed for visitors to visit, to be aware, to be cognizant of those who may not feel comfortable with a lot of people around, while at the same time ensuring that the common spaces can be used to their maximum potential to allow students to interact with each other. And then we passed a resolution several weeks back reaffirming the student body's earnest desire to preserve on-campus instruction. So I think everybody wants to see some sort of positive momentum here. And I think this is a very practical, easy step that can do that. And we all have already committed to ensuring that even when we do this, we're still going to follow guidelines that protect each other and the health of the community. So resolved, the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame du Lac encourages the Division of Student Affairs to further adjust residence hall visitor policies to allow for non-resident visitors to be permitted in common spaces while observing mask wearing and occupancy limits in order to grant students more practical and safe opportunities for informal social gathering on campus during winter months, and authorize rectors to adjust these visitor policies at their discretion. And with that, I yield my time back to Sarah for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben, for that synopsis. I'll also just recognize that we can go till 7:32 today because we started the meeting at 6:02, just so we don't feel rushed. Any questions for Ben? Madison.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think that's a conversation that rectors in their hall communities have with each other. I don't think, at least my impression, I had conversations with my own rector about this. My understanding is that rectors want to do what's best for their community. And I find it hard to believe that if the Division of Student Affairs has already proposed something like this. In fact, I will say this. I do believe it was a group of rectors who proposed an adjustment of the policy initially a couple of weeks back. So I think rectors are open to the idea. What I was trying to hit on there in regards to enforcement in different areas was to just be respectful of the idea that one dorm may be dealing with a different COVID situation than another dorm. So for example, say in one hall, there are a number of cases in a given week. The rector can say, hey, no visitors this week. We're all gonna go get surveillance tested at some point. And then that doesn't affect the other 31. Because I think right now there's a blanket coverage that unfair, whether we like it or not, it unfairly prevents certain residence halls it prevents residents of certain residence halls from welcoming friends into their community. I know, for example, we in Keogh Hall a few weeks ago had all of our residents. We're the largest men's dorm on campus. We had all of our residents, none in quarantine, none in isolation, yet we're under the same restrictions as other dorms who may have slightly more precarious COVID situations. So it's not necessarily saying to directors, hey, you shouldn't let people do this. It's more saying, hey, in the event that things don't go well, they have the authority to go ahead and say, in our hall this week, to protect the health of our community, we're going to do X, Y, Z. So does that answer your question? Okay.
Thanks, Ben. Question from Lainey.
Yeah, that's kind of off of Madison's point. I think the thing that worries me about this, I really like the resolution, I appreciate you guys writing it, but is that I feel like there's already discrepancies between norms and how the rules that are enforced. And I feel like this might just exacerbate it. And I completely agree with you that if like one dorm has more COVID cases, maybe they should like block off visitors, you know what I mean? Or like something to that extent. So with that being said, would you be okay with a friendly amendment that specifies that the discretion will be based on like the COVID situation and not just necessarily director's discretion of everything?
Yes, that's a very good point. I think that would help make things more specific, and it would more clearly voice my thoughts on that. So yes, I do welcome that friendly amendment to adjust it to say, actually, if you want to go ahead and make it. Does she have to make the friendly amendment? Or?
If you approve of it, I think we're all good, correct?
I do
Thomas?
approve of it.
Just needs the wording. At their discretion based on COVID-19?
Yeah, based on the amount of COVID-19 cases in the dorm.
Okay,
Based on the COVID-19 situation in the dorm.
great. We
Okay.
can proceed to Michael Murakami.
If I may make a comment on that, I think it should be based on percentage, not number. Because number like changes to like Keo versus like Carol. It's like much different.
Fair point. I saw Sam's hand.
Yeah, I think one of the valuable themes we've learned over the last few weeks, it's not really like the wording, but the essence of what we're going for. So I think just like naming, like based on the COVID situation, it's like, oh, well, that's what they mean.
Yeah.
And then I think directors will just like enjoy it on their own.
Absolutely.
At the
Thank you,
let's
Sam.
see. Authorize directors to adjust the visitor policy at their discretion based on the current COVID-19 situation in their residence hall.
Great, that's perfect. All right, Miles' hand is resolved then. Do we have any further questions for Ben or Patrick? Yes, Henry.
Motion to add questioning.
Okay, let's vote on that motion. All in favor? Hands up, or not. I'm not influencing your vote. Okay, great. And we are now moving to debate. Any points of debate anyone would like to raise? Yes, Ricardo.
Especially with winter coming very rapidly, I think this is an excellent step in the right direction in terms of emotional health on campus. As a resident of Zom House, I also really appreciate the flexibility because I understand that our COVID situation is, again, wildly different from that in Keogh. I think this is a great resolution across the board with clear implementable steps in the right direction, and I'm fully in favor of it.
Thank you, Ricardo. Yeah, I definitely wanted to make this a resolution that covers something that can be lasting beyond this semester into the next semester and that helps improve everyone's social well-being, because the physical health is important for everyone, but so is the social health. I think we've all felt the last few weeks that we could all use a positive step in the right direction, even if it is seemingly small as this. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thanks, Ricardo. Yes, is that Dan? Okay, Danny, go for it.
Yeah, first I want to thank Ben and Patrick for writing this. This is a great resolution. And I just want to say that I'm fully in support of this because Bomber Hall is a very new dorm that I'm from, and we're still trying to build the community. And this would be a great step in the right direction for us to keep integrating ourselves into the fuller scale of the Notre Dame housing.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, Madison.
Yeah, so now that you have that friendly amendment in place, I am willing to support this. I just didn't want to look my questions like sway anybody. I was just concerned about unequal treatment in voices programs because I've been on the team. So the friendly amendment, I'm full support.
Thank you, Madison.
Great clarification. Any other points of debate? Yes, Ricardo.
Motion to end debate and move to a vote.
I did see Anisha behind you. Do you mind if I honor her?
Oh, she can.
Okay, wonderful.
I was just adding support to that and saying that I've heard a lot of people in my community concerned with the winter months coming up, and I just wanted to thank you for the resolution.
Thank you.
Awesome. Continue, Ricardo. Yes.
Motion to end debate and move to a vote.
All right, we can vote on that motion. All in favor? Great, we can now enter a vote, and I wonder if Thomas has moved that handy link. He has not. Oh, he has. I'm so sorry. My cursor was blocking it. Great. Okay, we are now in a vote on SS 2021-20. Pull up that Google form, and I will give you all a minute to vote. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, we're already there, and it passed unanimously. Thank you all for your participation. All right, so nothing under new business thus far, but again, I would love to see your resolutions and orders and help you with them as would Thomas. So get those to me by Sunday, which would be great. And now we have announcements. Anyone have a hand for announcements? Aaron.
The Student Advisory Group for campus reopening is meeting on Wednesday, so if you have any points, please send them our way.
Love that. Okay, anything else? Michael Murakami. But I think, does everyone have a raid? Yeah, thank you, Michael. Okay.
Also playing with Charlotte USA on the track field, so if you want to go hang out on the grass there, it's really nice. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Brent. You know what? I will also make an announcement because I'm a multifaceted human. The ISSLP application is due on October 11th. If you have any questions, come ask me about it. Wonderful opportunity. Would invite you to discern it. Okay, any other announcements? Yes, that is, oh gosh, who is that?
I'm Dan Law, I'm the new Dillon senator. I replaced Mike Dugan, just so everyone knows.
Thank you, Dan Law. So nice to meet you. I now see the Dylan D on your shirt. Awesome. Okay, any other further announcements? Sam Canova.
Senior class council is giving away stamps if you want one to send me on the ballot. We'll be out on Wander on Tuesday.
Love it. Karen Kennedy would like me to clarify, Dan, that we will swear you in next week. So thank you so much for being here early. Any other announcements? Okay, Michael, go for it. Okay, let's vote. Great. You can all leave. Thank you. Enjoy your week.